Today we have the U.S. Senator from Massachusetts, Elizabeth Warren. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Oh, thank you for having me. We're going to have some fun today.
So I want to talk about the issue that's kind of hanging over all of our heads here, and that is that Republicans all around the country are introducing legislation to suppress the vote, and they're using the disproven fraud allegations as a pretense to do that. So can you briefly talk about H.R. 1, the For the People Act, and what that would do?
You bet. H.R. 1 says we're going to protect democracy. And that's what it's all about. So it's about early voting. It's about access to the polls. It's about overriding state efforts to suppress the vote by protecting the vote at the federal level, repassing the Voting Rights Act. It's every piece of it. And, I just hope everybody stops for 1 second and thinks about how it is that one of the two major political parties in America thinks that the only way they're really going to be able to win over time is if they can keep American citizens from voting. They know they are the minority party, the party that most people do not want to be with. And so they're trying to figure out how to change the laws to make sure that they can stay in control and they can keep advancing, frankly, an out of the mainstream right-wing agenda as a way to hang on to power.
Would these federal protections preclude a lot of these legislation and resolutions that are coming up in Republican legislatures in the states?
Yes, sir, they would. That is the whole point behind them. As you know, when there's conflict between state and federal law, the constitutional doctrine of preemption says federal law overrides. So, for example, if the federal government says there's going to be this much access to early voting and it'll be protected in the following 5 ways, doesn't make any difference what the states do at that point. You get that much protection as a federal floor. The states can go beyond that if they want, but that'll be the federal floor.
Okay. Well, the follow-up to that then is that legislation like that requires a 60-vote threshold to pass unless Democrats eliminate the filibuster, and yet there's opposition from a few Democrats to doing this, with the irony being that unless the filibuster is nuked and this Voting Rights Act is passed, those Democrats are actually helping relegate themselves into the minority. So you're on the inside here. Clearly, these Democratic holdouts must know that. What's the rationale here?
Well, you know my view on the filibuster. And that is, it's time to get rid of it. If the Republicans are going to just try to use it to try to block everything that we were sent to Washington to do. So here's how I look at this right now. We're going to take this one step at a time. The step right in front of us is trying to get the COVID relief package through. That we know we can do by reconciliation, which, as you know, means we only need 51 votes. And with Kamala, we've got 51. Now, the fight in front of us on that is going to be minimum wage, which we can talk about if you want to, but let's just set that one aside for a minute. Then we're going to have to start teeing up these really hard issues that you can't do through reconciliation, like protecting democracy, like creating a pathway to citizenship through our immigration reforms, like universal child care and universal college. So for those things, we're going to have to make a decision. And I say this, we as a party. Does Mitch McConnell just get a veto over everything we do? Or are we going to do the things that America needs in this moment, the things that we were elected to do? We don't have to have that argument in the abstract. My view is, let's have it in the very specific. We try to pass Voting Rights Act. If the Republicans then try to block it, then it's time for us to have the real gritty conversation about getting rid of the filibuster.
Yeah. And at the end of the day, what people are going to remember is not arbitrarily protecting an institution of the Senate. It's going to be protecting the right to vote and, giving dreamers a path to citizenship and so on.
Exactly right. People didn't send us here to talk about the good old days and how procedures worked within the Senate. They sent us here to get things done, to get the things done that need to be done, to make our government work, not just for a tiny little slice at the top, but make it work for everyone.
Let's move over to student loan debt. A really substantial number of Democrats support your resolution that would cancel up to $50,000 in student loan debt, which I should note that I'm in favor of also. The pushback to this, though, is what about the person who worked 2 jobs to pay off that debt only to see it get canceled for the next guy who didn't? So how do you reconcile this issue for those people?
I want to start by saying, when did we become an America that said, I'm only going to support a policy if I'm absolutely sure it's going to protect me in a tangible way right this minute? I contribute to federal taxes that support building highways in North Dakota. I haven't been traveling on any highways in North Dakota, but by golly, I support the idea that we built an interstate highway system. And here's the thing, overall, it's good for our whole nation, which ultimately means it's good for me. Same is true on student loan debt. Canceling out $50,000 worth of student loan debt, obviously good for the people who've got student loan debt, but it's good for all of us. It's good for our whole economy. And here's the reason why. This is a data argument. We've started tracking the data the federal government has and starting to see that as student loan debt goes up, you see fewer people moving out of their folks' home, fewer people buying homes, fewer people starting small businesses. If you've got to make that student loan monthly payment, you can't, you're a lot more risk averse about getting out there and rolling the dice on running your own business. How many really terrific businesses didn't get started last year because of student loan debt?
Right.
So we cancel out $50,000 in student loan debt. That means we're going to wipe out student loan debt for about 85% of the folks who have it and really cut it down for the remainder. That's a whole lot of economic energy that we free up in this economy. Canceling out student loan debt is the single best thing that the President of the United States could do all by himself to boost this economy and let millions more people participate in it. And that's good for you, whether you have student loan debt or not.
Yeah, that's a great point. Let's move over to Trump. And I promise this will be the first and last time we talk about him during this interview. So even though we saw the most bipartisan impeachment vote in history, it wasn't enough to convict him. But that doesn't erase the fact that his ability to run is dangerous. And people are going to claim that Democrats are afraid that he'll win. I'm not afraid that he'll win. I'm afraid of what will happen when he loses, which we've just seen. So the Senate had 56 votes to convict him. Why not hold a vote under Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, which only requires a simple majority of both houses where there's clearly support to bar him from ever holding federal office again?
So I think the 14th Amendment idea is really interesting. And I've been looking at this, talking with constitutional scholars and historians about it, what it meant in context. Let me just offer, before we take that step, I was very interested in the fact that Merrick Garland has made clear that he wants to do a fuller investigation around the insurrection, get a little more information, witnesses about what's happened, and see where we are. It's not like we have to take that step tomorrow. That step is still potentially there in another week, in another month. So I'd like to get Merrick Garland confirmed. I'd like to see us get a full team in at the Department of Justice and see what they start to uncover. Also, Nancy Pelosi, as you know, has set up a new commission and says we're going to do a 9/11 style. I don't want to wait years for this. That's not the point. But if we're in fact-finding mode in 2 different parts of government right now, it seems to me that the smart thing to do is see what else we learn about this and then make a decision on what steps we want to take, including possible steps under the 14th Amendment.
So let's move over to COVID relief. We have the $1.9 trillion COVID relief plan that's set to pass. Republicans have vowed to unify in opposition to it, despite Americans desperately needing this package to pass. So clearly they made a political calculation that refusing to give Democrats this win takes priority over delivering this relief. So is it more important to obstruct for them than to help people survive during a pandemic, like their own constituents?
Evidently so. I mean, because that's exactly what they're doing. You know what really gets me here? We talk about bipartisanship. This COVID relief package has bipartisan support all around the country. The one place it does not have bipartisan support is on Capitol Hill.
Yeah.
And by the way, these guys have the nerve to come in and say, well, they want to negotiate some piece of it and say, let's see if we can't water this down or weaken this. They want to criticize. They want to say, oh, it's not focused enough for them on this or enough on that. And yet, if you say, okay, we might be willing to talk about changing some parts of it, will you support it if we do? The answer is no, because ultimately it's all politics all the time for Mitch McConnell. And that's what he's playing out now. And by the way, let's just cross-reference our earlier conversation about the filibuster. When you're up against somebody who's all politics all the time, when you're up against somebody who says, I'm going to block it no matter what, because I'm not going to let you have the win. We saw that movie when Barack Obama was president. I don't want to see the remake while Joe Biden is president.
It's a great point. I think people have short memories and they don't remember that there were all these concessions made for Republicans during the ACA negotiations, and ultimately there were no Republicans who ultimately voted for it. So, there's only so many times that Lucy can pull the football away before we stop caking. Right. Okay, so a good number of young people watch the show and listen to the podcast, and they might be thinking about a run for office. So the question for you is for those people looking for some good advice. Let's say, totally hypothetically, that an Arctic blast devastated your state and the power grid failed. What Mexican resort would you visit, and would it be all-inclusive?
Absolutely. You'd go for the weekend package, right? But you'd leave your dog at home. Golly. But I will say, the idea of running for office, I do have 3 words of advice. Yes, yes, yes. Go do it. I'm somebody who I never in a million years thought I would run for office. I didn't sit around and nurture this little maybe. I was in on the policy end, the wonk end, the data nerd end, and always thought my job would be, and I'll give that to the people who are in public office, either the elected officials or the appointed officials, so they can use it in policy, and I'll try to help them on that. And then the moment came when you kind of look left, look right, and think, nobody else is going to do this. It's kind of the little red hen moment of running for office. I guess I'll do it. And what I've come to realize is there are more hard problems to be solved than there are good people willing to get up and get in the fight. So if you even have a hint that maybe running for office might be your thing, or helping somebody else run for office, do it. This is what makes democracy come alive. This is the part that gives us the opportunity not just to nibble around the edges, but to make the kind of big structural change that not just we should make in our country, we should, but that we must make. Given the kind of problems we face, we must make big structural change. And the only way that's going to happen is we get more people running for office who see that, who have the fire, and who are ready to go do it.
Yeah, and that's never been more apparent than seeing the people that we have. We have people validating the insurrection at the Capitol. We have people voting against desperately needed COVID relief. So, if ever there was a time to take these people out and replace their jobs.
And I should add to it, and that's true whether you're in a blue state, whether you're in a purple state, or whether you're in a state that is so red that you're not even sure there's a Democratic Party there. Yeah. We need people everywhere running, and we need people running for Congress, you bet, and for governor, but we need people running for Secretary of State. We need people who are willing to challenge at the town level, at the city level. We need people to say, this is an act of patriotism, to step up and to fight for what you believe in.
I do have one quick one here, and that is that this is an extremely pro-dog show. So can we see Bailey?
Hold on. I thought I had my doggy treats. Bailey, come here, bud. Come here. I've got something. Come here. He's lying on the floor. Just there. Here we go. Come on, baby. Come on, baby. Come on out. Oh, he's asleep. Come on, Bales. Oh, there he is. Can you see him? Oh, give me a kiss.
Yeah. Hold on. I have my dog right here. I can. All right. Here we go.
Oh, we got. Oh, what a! You can pick your dog up. Bailey,
yeah, he's
smush me.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, Senator Warren, thank you so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it. It was great speaking to you. And
let's do it again. We got so much to talk about. We got so much to do. So let's do this again.